Okay, I think we've given it just about enough time for folks to come on in. Let's get started. My name is Kaylin King. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm a program officer on the organizations team at the Mass Cultural Council. I co-manage the Festivals and Projects program along with my colleague Timothea, and we are delighted to have you all here today to learn about our fiscal year 25 cycle of the Festivals and Projects program. There's going to be a photo of me on the screen in a minute, but program staff will not be on screen throughout because, as you might have noticed, this webinar features ASL interpretation, which will be spotlighted throughout the presentation. Live captioning is presented by Paula Lowell, and ASL interpretation is provided by Jessica Carter and Kinsey Williamson. Service providers are from Partners Interpreting. If you want captions and would like to see them live in the Zoom window, you can use the automatic captions feature by clicking the icon at the bottom of your screen. For the live captioning services, you can actually follow the captions in a separate device or new window using the link my colleagues will put into the chat. We'll post it again a couple of times throughout to make sure it doesn't get lost. And if you need help accessing the captioning or interpretation, type the question in the Q&A feature of Zoom so we can assist. As I said, I am Kaylin King. For a brief description, I am a 30-something white woman with shoulder-length blonde hair wearing a blue jacket. Our other presenters today are Timothea Pham and Amy Chu.
Thanks, Kaylin. Hi, everyone. I'm Timothea Pham, a program officer with the Community Initiative team. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a Vietnamese American woman with straight long brown hair, medium tan skin, and a lavender purple sweater. I am also joined by my colleague Amy, so I will pass it along to her to introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Amy. I'm a program officer on the Creative Youth Development and Education team, and I use she, her pronouns. Just a visual description, I am a Chinese American woman with now shoulder length hair and wearing a shirt with lemons printed on it.
A few other members of our team here today are Charles Baldwin, Summer Smith, and Jay Wong, who will be helping to answer questions throughout or over email after the presentation. If you have questions throughout, we ask to help us manage them, that you please utilize the Q&A feature in Zoom rather than using the chat. You can use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. Mass Cultural Council will be answering questions throughout the presentation, and we'll be pausing a couple of times during the presentation to answer those questions out loud as well. We do ask that everyone try to keep their questions relevant to the section that we are in. We're going to cover a lot throughout the course of the presentation. You will also have an opportunity to ask questions vocally at the end of the presentation if you still have them then. Okay, let's take a look at what's on our agenda for today's presentation. First, we'll dive into a program overview and look at key dates. Then we will discuss eligibility. Following that, we'll delve into the review process and funding priorities. We'll take a little time to screen share and walk through the application itself, and then we'll open the floor for any questions you might have. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted to our agency's YouTube channel in a few days. The PowerPoint slides and a transcript from this session will also be available on our website. That wraps up the first section. I'm going to hand it over to Timothea to talk about our program overview.
Thank you, Caitlin. For a brief program overview for the Festivals and Projects program, the Festivals and Projects program provides one-year grants of $2,500 to fund activities that provide public benefit through the arts, humanities, and sciences. It's important to note that this grant is for organizations, groups, and collectives, essentially entities with more than one person involved. That includes nonprofits, certain types of for-profits, government entities, and fiscally sponsored organizations. Individuals and businesses that are organized as single-member limited liability companies or sole proprietorships are not eligible for this program. We will go into much more detail on this in the next section. Eligible programs will include projects, festivals, and activities that are currently available between July 1, 2024 and June 30th, 2025. You can take a look at the full program overview, including guidelines, via the link my team member will put in the chat. Let's take a look at some key dates for this program. So the application opens April 2nd, 2024. From April to May 2024, we will be hosting information sessions. Another one will be on April 9th next week. Office hours, individual support is also going to be available. On May 23rd, 2024, the application is due. That is the deadline. July 1, 2024 through June 30th, 2025, eligible festivals, projects, activities will be happening. September 2024 is when we will send out notifications to grantees. And the contracting is a multi-step process, so payments could go out in October, November, or later. Regarding the final report, grantees will be expected to complete a simple final report describing the use of their grant funds by July 18th, 2025 for legislative reporting and advocacy purposes. So I will be handing this section off back to Kaylin.
Great, happy to talk through eligibility. So who can apply? First, as Timothea mentioned, this is a program for organizations and not for individuals. But beyond that, eligibility for the types of organizations is intentionally broad. Nonprofits are eligible to apply, and you do not need to have your own 501c3, but you will need to be registered to do business in Massachusetts. In almost all cases, that means you will be listed in the Secretary of the Commonwealth's business entity database. You'll want to check your status with them before submitting an application, because if we can't find you, or if you are listed as dissolved or revoked, we can't fund you. There are some cases where a Massachusetts organization is not in the SOC database, but is registered with the Office of the Massachusetts Attorney General's Nonprofit Organizations / Public Charities Division. That is also fine. Certain types of for-profits are eligible to apply. You will also need to be organized or registered to do business in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So that means that you will be listed in the Corporate Division Business Entity Database with the Secretary of the Commonwealth. And you need to be one of the following types: a profit corporation, a multiple member limited liability company, limited partnership, or limited liability partnership. Single member limited liability companies and sole proprietorships are not eligible for this program. Government entities and municipal departments are also eligible to apply. So that could be a recreation department or a municipally run senior center, a public library, a local cultural council if they're doing their own programming. And then unincorporated organizations can be eligible if they have a fiscal agent. So we get the question all the time, does this program fund fiscally sponsored organizations? Yes. It does not fund fiscally sponsored individuals, but fiscally sponsored organizations, yes. To be eligible as an unincorporated organization for this program, you must do more than 50% of your programming in Massachusetts. You must have a Massachusetts address, and you must have an eligible fiscal agent at the time of the application. If you don't know what a fiscal agent is, it's an organization that agrees to act as the legal and contractual representative of the unincorporated group. They can provide a variety of services as part of that agreement, but the most important is that they maintain supervision over the funds, making sure that they're used for the purpose of the agreement for the contract. Eligible fiscal agents would be a nonprofit that has an active 501c3 status with the IRS and is registered to do business in Massachusetts. For the purpose of this program, we also accept Massachusetts municipalities as an applicant's fiscal agent. One important thing to know about using a fiscal agent is that your organization would not be paid directly. So the funding goes to the fiscal agent. They're the ones responsible for completing all of the contractual paperwork. They send us everything that we need. They sign the contract. They receive the payment, and then they are responsible for distributing it to you.
Kaylin?
Yes, hello.
I'm sorry, this is Cheyenne. I just wanted to stop you for a second because we have a good question about eligibility. Does it matter for how long your organization is an active, eligible charity?
No, it does not. And you do not need to have a 501c3 at all in order to be eligible. You just need to be registered in the state of Massachusetts, which means you're incorporated with the Secretary of the Commonwealth, or in some rarer cases, you would just be listed with the Attorney General's Office, Public Charities Division.
Great. So if you just got registered by the time you apply, that is okay.
Yes. Yeah. And if you're not listed in their database yet, you can contact us and send us what paperwork you have. There's sometimes a little bit of a delay to actually get a link on their website in their database. Okay, a couple of other notes on eligibility. There are a few other programs at the Mass Cultural Council where if you receive one of those grants, you will not be eligible for the Festivals and Projects program in our FY25 cycle. So organizations receiving funding from our Youth Reach program, our Cultural Districts Initiative in FY24, they're not going to be eligible. If you're receiving funding through the Mass Cultural Council's Cultural Investment Portfolio in FY24, it depends. That program's being phased out. So if this is your last year of funding in FY24, you can apply for Festivals and Projects funding. If your last year of funding through the portfolio is set to be FY25 through FY28, you will not be eligible for Festivals and Projects this year. And we can put instructions for how to check your final year in the chat. If you received a grant through the Festivals and Projects program in our FY24, so that's the year that's currently happening, if you will not be able to complete that approved project by June 30th, and you've already been in touch with us and you've received an extension from us, you cannot come back and apply again for FY25. If you received a grant through Festivals and Projects in our FY24 and did do your project as planned, we'd love to have you come back. You're absolutely welcome to apply again, though you will still need to complete your FY24 final report to tell us how it went. Another thing to note is you can apply for the Festivals and Projects program and operating grants for organizations, which is another grant program for organizations that's open right now, if your organization meets the eligibility requirements for that program, which are different from this one. An organization that is successful in both programs would only receive one of those grants, presumably operating grants for organizations, because those grants are a little bit larger, unless your organization chooses otherwise. Okay, I'm gonna hand it to Amy, and I see there are lots of questions coming in about eligibility, and we will have a break after Amy speaks to answer all of those.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to talk about program eligibility now. So just up at the top, each organization can only submit one application. And we'll kind of go into this more later, and feel free to ask questions about what that the language and the terms that we use in the program eligibility guidelines. So when we talk about the arts, we're talking about the creation of work, visual media, folk design, literary, and interdisciplinary arts. They also include the presentation, preservation, and education about works in these disciplines. Humanities are types of learning that deal with human values and aspirations, human thought and culture, language and creativity. Examples include, but are not limited to, history, social studies, philosophy, criticism, and literature. For sciences, we mean cultural, interpretive, and educational expression of science. And that refers to the type of learning that deals with nature, science, and technologies in ways that explain how they relate to people's lives. Organizations that conduct interpretive sciences are aquariums, botanical gardens, nature centers, natural history museums, planetariums, and science centers. So what do we mean when we say programs intended for and promoted to members of the general public? So festivals and projects grants are for activities that contribute to the community rather than benefiting any private individual or group. However, this does not mean that a large group of people needs to be there to meet that requirement. Funded activities should be publicly available by exhibit, performance, demonstration, reading, or other means. And when we say publicly available, that means any cultural activity that is available to the general public by paid or free admission. This next point is a bit different from last year, so try to tune in here and pay attention. For this program, community-based means any cultural activity that focuses on serving the needs of a geographic community, ethnic heritage, or cultural tribal tradition, and may include events, education, performances, conservation, or cultural revitalization efforts, or portions of the general public requiring specific accommodations. This could mean seniors in care centers, incarcerated individuals, people with disabilities, people in recovery programs, etc. We recognize that portions of the general public require specific accommodations to engage in or experience the arts, humanities, and/or sciences. So projects and festivals and activities serving these populations are also eligible for funding.
Community-based is meant to recognize that not every activity is meant for the entirety of the general public. So it can include things that are really meant to serve the needs of a specific geographic community, ethnic heritage, cultural or tribal tradition. It could include things like education, performances, conservation, cultural revitalization efforts. It also includes portions of the general public that require specific accommodations. So it couldn't be available to anybody off the street. So that would be seniors in care centers, incarcerated individuals, people in recovery homes, etc. What we don't mean by that are university students, K-12 school groups, donors, members, or other limited audiences. Those would not be considered specific portions of the general public. Projects that benefit any one specific private individual or group would be ineligible. Amy, do you want to give it a shot?
Okay, I'll try. Thanks. So a few other things that your proposal will need to have include a minimum budget of $2,500 in cash expenses. So that means $2,500 out the door that you anticipate spending. Overhead and indirect costs are included in that budget. So we know that you need to pay staff or a portion of electricity to make a project happen. It does not include in-kind expenses, which means that donated time or goods will not be counted towards the $2,500 minimum budget. The program also needs to take place in Massachusetts. This could be in person or virtual. For example, making a recording of a performance in Massachusetts and distributing that recording in Massachusetts as well as nationally is eligible. However, a Massachusetts-based performing group that tours in only Vermont and New Hampshire would not be eligible. The festival project or activity also needs to be accessible to people who are deaf or have a disability. So if you have questions about accessibility specifically, we really encourage you to review our agency's access policy and or get in touch with our colleague Charles Baldwin at charles.baldwin@mass.gov. Activities that are inherently religious, such as religious worship, instruction, and proselytization, are not eligible. Please note, however, that we do accept applications from religious organizations doing primarily cultural events, such as concert series. Last two are pretty straightforward. Events for a political candidate running for office are not eligible, and your program must not discriminate on the basis of race, gender, religious creed, color, national origin, ancestry, disability, age, gender, identity, or sexual orientation.
Hi, I would love to start with a question that I did not want to forget. There was a question of can your fiscal sponsor be located outside of Massachusetts if your organization is inside Massachusetts?
Yes, absolutely. They still just need to be registered to do business in Massachusetts, which means they might be registered as a foreign corporation with the Massachusetts Secretary of the Commonwealth, or they could be registered with the Massachusetts Attorney General's Public Charities Division. And we can help you figure out how to check those things or put you in touch with the right people if they are not already registered in those places.
Kaylin, there's another question. Can you confirm that part of the $2,500 budget may be payment of staff?
Yes, absolutely. So the eligible budget includes any of your cash expenses. We have no limit on overhead or indirect costs. We know that you need to pay staff and pay for electricity in order to get these programs up and running. So that's absolutely fine.
Great. There is another question. To be eligible, does a festival need to be free to the public, or can it charge an admission fee if we anticipate that admission revenue will not cover the full cost of the event?
Yes, absolutely. It does not have to be free in order to be eligible. We will get into funding priorities in the next section, and festivals, projects, activities that are free do receive a little bit of a prioritization, but that's one of several prioritization factors, and it's definitely not eligibility. Okay, is there anything else directly related to eligibility, or we can keep moving?
Yeah, just one more question, I think in the chat. Can I apply for a public school for educational art program?
Sure. So that's gonna depend on the primary audience for the program. With festivals, projects, and activities that are meant specifically for a school audience would not be eligible for this program. We have another program opening in the fall that we would encourage you to look into. But if it's primarily for a school audience, this program is not the right fit. That doesn't mean that schools are ineligible. There are plenty of schools that have festivals, projects, and activities that are meant to be for the general public, or meant to be their town. We know in a lot of towns, the high school is the hub of all activity, which is great. And things that meet that are absolutely eligible for this program. Okay, we're going to keep moving on to the next section. Okay, funding priorities, first of all, are not eligibility requirements. So, hooray. Thank you, hooray first we have our presentation back. Second hooray, you're an eligible type of organization. Third hooray, you're an eligible type of project, festival, activity. Fourth hooray, let's pretend now that you have already submitted your application. Timothy is going to be doing a walkthrough of that in a minute. So what happens next? All applications will be reviewed by staff to verify eligibility. We will reach out to you if there are questions about your application which could affect your eligibility. So we'll get in touch if there turns out to be something that's a major question. How will funding decisions be made? Well, a couple of big things to note before we get into the details of funding priorities. We don't know how many grants we're going to be giving through this program at this point in time. The number of grants that we can give is dependent on the agency's FY25 state budget appropriation and our FY25 spending plan, which is to be approved by the Governing Council, we hope in August 2024. So once we have that information, we will be able to make determinations about how many organizations we can fund through this program. It is fairly competitive. Last year, we had 1,300 applications. We were able to fund 700, but those numbers mean nothing because we still have no idea what our state budget appropriation is going to be for FY25. But that gives you at least a little bit of a sense of the volume in terms of how many applications we are expecting to get in. Okay. Funding priorities. So if we receive more applications than we are able to fund, this is part of how the funding determinations will be made. Applicants that meet these qualities will be prioritized in the process. So applicants that have not received funding from the Mass Cultural Council in the last 3 fiscal years, or that are applying to the Mass Cultural Council for the first time. That means direct funding from the Mass Cultural Council in our FY24, FY23, or FY22 cycles. Direct funding. So if you've received funding from your local cultural councils, that does not count as direct. If you've just received a grant from the festivals and projects round in FY23, you're eligible. We want you to apply again. You just wouldn't get this particular priority point. Applicants that self-identify as led by and serving people of the global majority, so Black, Indigenous, people of color, Latinx, Asian, Native American, Pacific Islander, all other ethnicities of color, they will get a prioritization through the program if they fill out the BIPOC-centered organization identification. So that's a self-designation, self-classification form that you fill out in our agency's grants management system. Another group of applicants that will be prioritized in the program are organizations participating in the Council's Card to Culture program. That's a voluntary program that expands access to low-income and working families. It's in partnership with multiple state agencies and over 400 now cultural organizations across Massachusetts. So it's voluntary, it's not a grants program. You can read a lot more about it on our website. And one of our colleagues just did a really great info session on that, so we can put the link for that in the chat as well. So additional priorities that apply to the actual proposal, not eligibility requirements, but things that will factor in if we receive more applications than we're able to fund. So first are festivals, projects, activities that are free to the public. Second are festivals, projects, activities in certain under-resourced cities and towns. So that includes places designated as gateway cities and towns that are below the state's median household income and below statewide educational attainment thresholds. We can put the link to the full list of those cities and towns in the chat. Festivals, projects, or activities that significantly incorporate or are primarily focused on arts, humanities, and sciences. So you only need to incorporate something like that in order to be eligible, but things that are, entirely a concert would be more prioritized. And lastly, festivals, projects, and activities that align with the agency values of public service and inclusion, which are outlined in our strategic plan. Okay, are there any questions about the review process or funding priorities?
Yeah, Kaylin, a frequently asked question that people have is, does local cultural council funding affect prioritization? So if you've received local cultural council funds in the past.
It does not. Good for you. Other questions about review process or prioritization? Or we can keep going.
There's a few questions in the chat. I don't know if they got answered for folks. One says, can I apply for a public school for educational art program?
Yep, so it's going to depend on who the primary audience is. If it's primarily intended for a school audience, then that's not going to be eligible. If it's primarily intended for the public, then it would be.
Okay. I see another one that says, can money be spent on equipment? The answer is yes.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was it. I just want to make sure no one's questions got missed, but that's it.
Great, thank you, Summers.
We also had Amanda, you had your hand raised for a bit, so just wanted to give you the opportunity to ask your question live if that was of interest.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I've been out of work for some time and I looked at a lot of different schools and I found out there's several in the area that don't have funding for an educational arts program and they weren't able to hire art teachers. And I just thought that was really awful, especially for the special needs children. They can't have a well-rounded education. And now that I've qualified for Social Security income, I've got more free time on my hands. So I realized that I probably either need to file for a nonprofit status, contact a school and have them apply. And I realized that I won't be eligible for this particular program, but that means that maybe in the fall.
Yeah, sure. We'll follow up with you individually offline and when we have more information on what that program in the fall launching is
Right,
going to be.
this is just my first time, I didn't really know much about it. I just done a lot of research online. And I'd really like to be able to provide educational programs to the schools that can't afford my services.
Yeah, great. Thank you. We'll follow up with you. Make sure that if you could send us your email in the chat, or our email for the program is festivals.projects@mass.gov.
So should I look into getting a nonprofit status if I want to provide these services?
That's I wouldn't want to advise you on that without more information about what it is that you're looking to do. So we'll follow up with you individually.
So I should probably reach out to the schools that I want to provide the services for and have them apply.
In the fall, but yeah, potentially.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll follow up when we have more information on what that program's going to look like.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yep, great. Okay, I am going to hand it off to Timothea to walk through what the application process looks like.
Thank you, Kaylin. And again, we're going to have a few more sections in this presentation for people to ask questions. So, yep, I will be conducting the application review. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to be sharing my screen. Can everyone see this? All right, I will take that as a yes. So in order to apply for this grant program, you're first going to go to massculturalcouncil.smartsimple.com. This is our grants management system. If you're not familiar with it, this was the first step for how to apply. And so if you don't have an account yet, what you're going to do is you are going to click register under new to the system right here. And again, this program is intended for organizations, groups, and collectives. So if you are not currently in the system, you're going to click organization. And if you're completely new, you're going to register your organization manually. And if you do have a current organization and you just want to be added to that, you can look up your organization manually. This will auto-populate. You'll fill in your contact information here, and then you are going to add yourself. And if you do have any questions about registering as a new user, you can always feel free to reach out to us at festivals.projects@mass.gov. We can set up a one-on-one session with you, or you can come to office hours with those questions as well. But once you register as an organization, you'll be brought to your home screen here, and your homepage should look something like this if you're an organization. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to current opportunities. There's a few opportunities here. I wanted to highlight the BIPOC-centered organization self-identification form that has been mentioned, the Card to Culture program that has also been mentioned, and the Festivals and Projects grant is the third opportunity here. Again, a brief description. You can learn more here. The deadline is on May 23rd, and you're going to click Apply Now. All right, great. So again, click on Save Draft before beginning so you don't lose any of your work. And please review the Festivals and Projects Program guidelines and frequently asked questions before completing this eligibility quiz. This is for us to know if you are an eligible entity, and this is the first step. So we encourage you to apply if your group, collective, organization is a nonprofit organization, a for-profit organization, a government entity, and an unincorporated organization. Again, we went through this through the eligibility section, but just wanted to reiterate that for nonprofits, you need to be registered to do business in the Commonwealth in good standing with the Massachusetts Secretary of the Commonwealth at time of the application, and listed in the corporate division's business entity database, or is a Massachusetts organization registered with the Office of the Massachusetts Attorney General's Nonprofit Organizations / Public Charities Division. But again, if you do have questions about this, please reach out to us. So for legal status, I'm going to be acting as a nonprofit organization right now. So we have a few options here. Again, I listed that. So I'm going to click nonprofit organization. Again, you want to look up your organization on the Secretary of the Commonwealth's website. You want to verify that. So do test that you are able to confirm your Massachusetts incorporation by looking it up in the SOC website. So yes, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look up my organization here. So this is the website that you're going to be going to. I just pulled up an example of an organization. So I'm going to put that here. We do want to verify that with a link. And again, we did go over this in past sections. So does your festival, project, or activity include activities that are inherently religious, such as religious worship, instruction, and proselytization? Is the festival, project, or activity an event for a political candidate running for office? Does the festival, project, or activity discriminate on the basis of race, gender, religious creed, color, national origin, ancestry, disability, age, gender identity, or sexual orientation. So once you fill that all out, you're going to click Save Draft. Again, we just want to make sure we always click Save Draft before moving on to the next section. And then we're going to be clicking Check Eligibility. So if you see this, you have successfully completed the eligibility quiz. We will conduct a final eligibility review once you submit your application, but you can go ahead, go to the bottom and click Proceed. Great. So now you get to go on and go to the next tab. So you've reviewed your information here to confirm that it is correct. And if it is not, you can contact us or you can go to your homepage and make edits in your organization profile. So again, I'm confirming that this is all correct. And so I agree, and then I'm going to click Save Draft. I will be going to Contract Information, the next tab. So if awarded a grant, Mass Cultural Council will send contract documents to the below contacts. Because we are moving to a different type of contracting procedure online, we need more verification. So we're going to have your contract authorized signatory information entered here. So it's the person who has the legal authority to sign contracts at your organization. And then we're going to put the contract authorized officer information. So the person who has the authority to attest that the above person can sign contracts. So once you're finished filling that out, click Save Draft, and we will get to the meat of the application. So for the project information tab, you'll be first asked to put the name of your festival project or activity. Again, this is a grant program that covers projects happening July 1st, 2024 to June 30th, 2025. So if you don't have like an exact name, just do the best you can. And this goes with a lot of these details here. So project discipline, please select the option that matches your proposal the best. Again, we have a number of options from dance to science. Festival project or activity type. And this question is used really for our staff to organize our review process in a more effective way. So again, we have single event, concert, performance, reading, ongoing series / exhibition, affair / festival, class, lesson, workshop, public art / installation, or if that doesn't resonate with you, you can always click other project or activity. The next question, is your organization the primary producer of this festival project or activity? So for example, a band performing at a larger festival would not be the primary producer. The organization hosting the festival would be the primary producer. So click yes, no, or other. And if other, you get to provide a little bit more detail about who the other primary producer is. For beginning date, we want to know when the public component of the festival project or activity starts, right? So if you and your organization, you're creating a mural and you're doing, you're applying specifically maybe for the launch of the mural, we do want to know the beginning date of the launch event that you're doing and the end date as well. So this gets a little confusing sometimes. So you're going to click on the calendar and actually choose the date that you want to use. And same with the end date. And if, again, you don't have all of the details lined out, you can definitely just put a note here. And we're pretty flexible with this program. We do understand that things change. So if there are any changes, you can always email us and let us know once approved. For this description, we include this in the contract. So you're going to start your response with 2 or 4, and then just a short sentence about what this funding would go to. So here you're going to be able to elaborate on the sentence above and tell us actually what you're hoping to do, right? What is the goal or purpose of your festival, project, or activity? Describe your programming and activities with as much detail as you can at this time. Next question, how does your festival, project, or activity incorporate the arts, humanities, or interpretive sciences? Again, if you're doing a town festival, you can list that you're employing performers, artists, singers in the festival, for example. So the next question, who is your intended audience for this festival, project, or activity? How will it be promoted to that audience? Again, we want to reiterate an eligibility point here that your activity must be publicly available and or community-based. And if you do have any questions about that, you can obviously, reach out to us, come to our office hours, or set up a one-on-one meeting with us to discuss a little bit more. For the next question, how many people do you estimate will benefit from / engage with your festival, project, or activity? Again, give us a ballpark estimate if you don't know exactly. You can use data and your past festivals, or if you're a new festival, just explain what your target is for this. And then for this section, this is something that was mentioned that is a new addition to our application and our program. Just the reiteration of the concepts of public service and inclusion at Mass Cultural Council. So we really want to ask, how does your festival, project, or activity provide public benefit with these values in mind? For the next question, we wanted to ask, will your project or festival be entirely free to participants? And we have a few options here. Yes, to be determined, no. And if you select yes, there will be no admission charge for the festival project. Festivals charging food and vendors could be counted as entirely free. If certain components will be free to everyone, you can click no. And then if your festival or project is only free to certain populations, please select no as well. So describe the steps you will take to ensure the project or festival is accessible to people who are deaf or who have a disability. Here you have the option of explaining that. You can access our access policy through this link, and you can email our program officer, Charles Baldwin. We are going to put his email in the chat as well, but you have it here in case you do have any questions about that. So for the next question, where will your festival, project, or activity take place? And again, this is something that if you don't know, just put to be determined, enter the name or the venue or the place where your activity will happen. And we're expanding on this here with the option of letting us know which city or town that you will be hosting your project or festival. So again, we have all 351 cities and towns here. There's also an optional explanation of a location. So again, if you're, debating whether to do it in Northampton or East Hampton, that's something that you could put here. You can also put additional links to, your festival, project, or activity here that would give us a better sense of what you are trying to produce. And we are aware that not everyone has social media or a website, which is totally fine. But if you have hosted something in the past, or if you want to give us a better sense of what your activity or project or festival would look like, you can feel free to upload flyers or any type of other materials that would enhance your application. So I'm going to click Save Draft. Ooh. And we're going to go to the budget section. So super close. Again, we talked about a minimum project budget of $2,500 in cash expenses. So for the project budget, we really want to see your entire project budget. So click this, every line item, right? How many artists are you going to employ? If you're doing, marketing / promotion, how much would that be, right? So again, every budget line item for your specific project or festival. So once you're done, always click Save Draft, and here you will be able to describe projected income. So please describe projected income needed to complete the festival project or activity. And then for here, we would like to ask if you have any in-kind support, right? If you are having materials, resources donated to you, feel free to put it here. And again, feel free to reach out to us if you do have questions about this. Always save draft before moving on to the next section. For prioritization factors, this is something that you will not enter yourself, but if you do have questions, we are here to review and to explain whatever this is. So funding history, BIPOC-centered self-identification, participation in card to culture. These are priority points that have been mentioned previously. And then once you're done, review, make sure everything's correct. If you're ready to submit, click I agree, and then click submit. Great, so I am aware that we are at 60 minutes. Again, apologies for all the technical difficulties. We will have another session, but just wanted to mention that our office hour small group meetings are on agency dates. Please reach out to us at festivals.projects@mass.gov. We have our phone number, shared phone line, 617-858-2821. If you need help with the application, technical side, always reach out to us, but we also have our grants team, so grants.team@mass.gov, and please stay signed up, or please stay up to date with our newsletter and our Power of Culture blog. And these are our personal emails as well that you can find on the website.